Faith is one of the oldest answers humanity has ever given itself. It existed before science, before philosophy, before governments, and even before written language. From the moment humans became aware of their own existence, faith emerged as a response to something far deeper than ignorance. It emerged as a response to fear, uncertainty, and the unbearable weight of not knowing. The first humans did not ask philosophical questions for curiosity. They asked them to survive. The world around them was unpredictable and hostile. Thunder struck without warning. Animals killed without reason. Disease appeared suddenly. Death came without explanation. The human mind was not yet equipped to understand cause and effect, but it was already capable of fear. And fear demands answers. When reason cannot provide them, faith does. At its core, faith is not about truth. It is about endurance. It is the human capacity to live with uncertainty by transforming it into meaning. Faith allows the mind to say, "I do not understand this, but it matters." Without that transformation, chaos becomes unbearable. Humans cannot live long in a world that feels random and meaningless. Faith was the first structure imposed on chaos. The earliest forms of faith appeared as myths. Natural forces were given intention. The sun was not just a star, it was a being. Storms were not weather, they were anger. Death was not an ending, it was a passage. These explanations were not primitive mistakes, they were psychological tools. By giving the unknown a face, humans made it emotionally manageable. If something has intention, it can be negotiated with. If it has a will, it can be appeased. Faith created the illusion of control where none existed. Over time, faith evolved from personal coping into social structure. As groups grew larger, behavior needed regulation. Faith became law before law existed. It explained not only why the world behaved as it did, but how humans should behave within it. Morality was no longer optional, it was commanded. This is where faith became powerful, not just because it comforted individuals, but because it organized societies. Religion is faith that has been systematized. It standardizes meaning. It defines good and evil. It promises reward and threatens punishment. Most importantly, it answers the questions humans fear the most. Why am I here? What happens when I die? Does my suffering matter? These are not questions reason can easily satisfy. Reason explains mechanisms. Faith explains purpose. From a philosophical perspective, faith is not the opposite of reason. It predates it. Reason asks, is this true? Faith asks, can I live with this? These questions operate on different levels. Reason demands proof. Faith demands acceptance. Acceptance provides stability. Proof provides doubt. And doubt is uncomfortable. Human psychology reveals why faith is so persistent. The brain is not designed solely for truth. It is designed for survival. Meaning is more valuable to survival than accuracy. A painful truth can break a person. A comforting belief can keep them functioning. This is why faith does not disappear as knowledge increases. It adapts. When religious faith weakens, ideological faith rises. People begin to believe in nations, leaders, systems, progress, technology. The object changes, the mechanism does not. Faith is often misunderstood as merely belief in God. In reality, faith is belief in certainty. It is trust placed in something larger than oneself. Humans fear being alone in a meaningless universe. Faith removes that loneliness. It tells the individual, you are part of something. You belong. You are seen. Even if this is not empirically true, it is emotionally powerful. History shows that people do not hold on to faith because it is always correct, but because losing it is terrifying. When faith collapses, it leaves a vacuum. That vacuum is filled by anxiety, nihilism, or new belief systems. This is why societies in crisis often become more religious, not less. Faith thrives when control is lost. One of faith's greatest strengths is also its greatest danger. It resists change. Faith offers stability, and stability resists questioning. Once a belief becomes sacred, doubt becomes betrayal. At this point, faith stops protecting the human mind and starts imprisoning it. When faith demands obedience rather than understanding, it begins to conflict with reason. Emotionally, faith comforts. Reason challenges. Faith says, everything happens for a reason. Reason says, sometimes things happen without reason. Most humans prefer the first answer, not because it is true, but because it is survivable. This is why faith cannot be simply dismissed as ignorance. It is a human response to existential vulnerability. Without faith, many would collapse under the weight of reality. But without reason, humanity would stagnate, trapped in comforting illusions. So what is faith? Faith is the human mind choosing mean. Reason is the moment humanity stopped accepting the world as it was told and began demanding that it explain itself. It is not instinct, it is not belief, it is not comfort. Reason is the deliberate act of questioning what appears obvious, sacred, or inevitable. If faith was humanity's first answer, reason was its first rebellion. At its core, reason is the human capacity to think independently of fear, tradition, and authority. It is the ability to ask why, even when the answer threatens stability. Reason does not promise meaning, it promises clarity, and clarity is often painful. Unlike faith, reason did not emerge to protect humans emotionally. It emerged because survival eventually required accuracy. As humans began to farm, build, trade, and organize, belief alone was no longer enough. Guesswork failed. Rituals did not always work. Patterns needed to be understood, not just accepted. Reason was born from necessity, not comfort. The earliest form of reason was observation. Humans noticed that certain actions led to predictable outcomes. Fire burns, seasons repeat, objects fall. Over time, observation turned into logic. Logic turned into explanation. Explanation turned into systems of thought. Reason began to replace myth, not because myth was foolish, but because it was unreliable. Philosophically, reason is the pursuit of truth through evidence and coherence. It asks whether ideas align with reality, whether conclusions follow from premises, whether beliefs contradict observable facts. Where faith accepts, reason verifies. Where faith settles, reason destabilizes. This is why reason has always been feared. Reason threatens power because power relies on unquestioned beliefs. Kings rule by divine right until reason asks why. Traditions persist until reason questions their purpose. Moral codes remain absolute until reason examines their consequences. Wherever reason enters, hierarchy trembles. Historically, reason did not replace faith overnight. The two coexisted uneasily. Ancient thinkers attempted to explain the universe without gods, or at least without relying on them exclusively. This was revolutionary. To suggest that nature followed laws rather than divine moods was to strip the universe of intention, and that terrified people. Reason does not care whether its conclusions are comforting. It does not soften its findings. It does not ask whether humans are ready. It only asks whether something is consistent, observable, and logically sound. This indifference makes reason powerful but also alienating. Psychologically, reason demands responsibility. When events are no longer attributed to gods, fate, or destiny, humans must accept causality. Mistakes become human failures, not divine punishments. Suffering becomes random, not meaningful. Reason removes excuses. This is why many resist it. Reason also fragments certainty. Faith offers one answer. Reason offers many possibilities. It introduces doubt, probability, and revision. A belief held by reason is never final. It can be challenged, improved, or discarded. This instability is intellectually honest but emotionally exhausting. Throughout history, reason advanced slowly and painfully. Those who practiced it were often punished. They were accused of heresy, arrogance, or corruption, not because they were wrong, but because they undermined certainty. Reason does not attack faith directly. It dissolves it quietly by asking questions faith cannot tolerate. One of reason's greatest achievements was science. Science is reason formalized. It tests ideas against reality. It accepts failure. It changes its mind. This flexibility is its strength and the reason it feels threatening. Faith declares truth eternal. Reason declares truth provisional. But reason is not flawless. Reason without limits can become cold, detached, and dehumanizing. It can reduce humans to numbers, systems, and mechanisms. When reason ignores emotion, it can justify cruelty in the name of efficiency. History has shown that rational systems without moral grounding can produce horrors just as great as blind faith. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Reason is not inherently moral. It explains how to do things, not whether they should be done. It can build hospitals or weapons. It can free minds or optimize oppression. Reason is a tool, and like all tools, its impact depends on who controls it and why. Emotionally, reason offers no comfort in the face of death. It does not promise justice beyond life. It does not guarantee meaning. It can explain suffering, but explanation does not heal grief. This is where reason reaches its limit. Humans do not live by understanding alone. So what is reason? Reason is humanity's refusal to accept inherited answers. Reason is the discipline of doubt. Reason is the courage to live without guarantees. Reason is the willingness to replace certainty with inquiry. It gave humans control over nature. It shattered sacred illusions. It expanded knowledge beyond imagination, but it also exposed emptiness where meaning once lived. Humans need both faith and reason at the same time, because they are not built to survive on truth alone or comfort alone. The human mind searches for understanding, but the human heart searches for meaning, and these two needs rarely overlap. Reason explains the world as it is. Faith explains why enduring that world feels possible. Reason answers how things happen. Faith answers why living through them matters. When humans rely only on faith, they gain emotional shelter but lose clarity. When they rely only on reason, they gain clarity but lose emotional ground. History shows that humans collapse in both extremes. This is not a philosophical accident. It is a psychological necessity. Reason operates through doubt, analysis, and correction. It demands effort and discipline. It strips illusions and exposes reality even when reality is cold, unfair, and meaningless. Faith operates through acceptance, trust, and emotional certainty. It protects the individual from despair by offering purpose, even when evidence is absent. Humans need reason to navigate the external world accurately, but they need faith to survive the internal experience of that accuracy. Because knowing the truth does not automatically make life bearable. The human nervous system cannot continuously exist in uncertainty, randomness, and mortality without some form of emotional anchoring. Reason can explain death. Faith can make it survivable. Reason can explain suffering. Faith can give it meaning. Reason can show that justice is not guaranteed. Faith can suggest that injustice is not final. This is why humans instinctively resist pure rationality. When reason dominates completely, life becomes mechanical. People are reduced to systems, functions, and outcomes. Emotions are dismissed as inefficiencies. Meaning is treated as illusion. This creates emptiness, alienation, and nihilism. On the other hand, when faith dominates completely, questioning disappears. Truth becomes static, authority becomes sacred, and human progress stalls. beliefs stop adapting to reality and begin demanding that reality adapt to belief. History shows that civilizations stagnate or become violent when either side wins completely. The human mind evolved to balance survival accuracy with emotional resilience. Reason provides accuracy. Faith provides resilience. One without the other destabilizes the psyche. This is why humans instinctively oscillate between them. Even the most rational individuals hold unprovable beliefs about purpose, value, or identity. And even the most faithful individuals use reason in daily life to survive, build, and plan. This coexistence is not hypocrisy, it is design. The brain itself is divided between emotional processing and analytical processing. These systems evolve together, not separately. Reason allows humans to predict. Faith allows humans to endure the unpredictability that remains. Reason helps humans control nature. Faith helps humans accept what cannot be controlled. Reason offers power. Faith offers peace. And humans require both power and peace to function. When reason strips meaning away, faith rushes in to repair the damage. When faith blocks reality, reason pushes back to restore balance. This tension is not a flaw in humanity. It is the mechanism that prevents collapse. The problem begins only when one claims absolute authority over the other. When faith declares itself unquestionable, reason becomes dangerous. When reason declares meaning unnecessary, faith becomes desperate. This is why humans have never resolved the conflict between faith and reason, and never will, because resolving it would require humans to stop being human, to exist without doubt or without hope, to live without truth or without comfort. And history shows that humans cannot survive long in either condition. This is why faith and reason are not enemies. They are opposing supports holding the same fragile structure upright. Remove either one and the structure collapses. And this is why humanity will always need both at the same time, even while pretending it wants only one. Faith is not born as the enemy of reason, but it often becomes one when it begins to occupy the space where reason should operate. At its origin, faith does not compete with reason because it emerges long before reason is capable of functioning. In the earliest stages of human development, faith was not a rival explanation to rational thought, but a substitute for the absence of explanation. When humans lacked the tools to understand nature, causality, or consequence, faith filled the void. Reason was not pushed aside because it did not yet exist in a usable form. In this sense, faith did not oppose reason. It replaced what reason could not yet provide. However, this relationship changes the moment reason matures. Reason grows through observation, evidence, and correction. It begins to explain what was once mysterious. When this happens, faith faces a choice. It can retreat into areas reason cannot reach, or it can defend territory that reason has begun to illuminate. This is the moment conflict begins. When faith refuses to retreat, it stops being a shelter and becomes a barrier. It no longer protects humans from uncertainty, but from truth. From that point on, faith does not replace reason, it obstructs it. This is why faith sometimes appears as the enemy of reason, not because belief itself is hostile, but because it resists displacement. The danger does not lie in faith answering questions reason cannot yet answer. The danger lies in faith insisting on answers where reason is capable of inquiry. When belief declares itself complete, final, and unquestionable, it freezes understanding. Reason cannot operate in an environment where conclusions are sacred. Reason depends on revision. Faith depends on preservation. This difference creates friction that feels irreconcilable. From the perspective of faith, reason looks like erosion. It slowly dismantles certainty. It removes mystery. It strips the world of intentionality, and to many humans, this feels like loss. Reason does not promise purpose. It does not guarantee justice. It does not ensure that suffering matters. Faith does. From the perspective of reason, faith looks like stagnation. It halts questioning. It introduces explanations immune to correction. It allows emotion to override evidence. This feels dangerous because uncorrected beliefs can justify harm. When faith occupies domains where reason should operate, it becomes the enemy of progress. When reason attempts to occupy domains where faith provides emotional survival, it becomes the enemy of meaning. This is why neither can fully replace the other. Reason cannot replace faith in matters of existential endurance. It cannot tell humans why they should continue when life becomes unbearable. It cannot offer comfort in the face of death. It cannot guarantee that suffering has value. Faith steps in here not as a rival to truth, but as a response to vulnerability. In this domain, faith is not the enemy of reason, it is its supplement. But when faith moves beyond this role and begins explaining the physical world, imposing rules on inquiry, or declaring reality settled, it overreaches. At that point, it no longer replaces reason, it suppresses it. History repeatedly shows this pattern. When faith governs the unknown, it stabilizes. When it governs the known, it suffocates. When reason governs the known, it advances. When it attempts to govern the unknowable, it empties life of meaning. This reveals the true nature of their relationship. Faith is not inherently the enemy of reason, and it is not merely a placeholder either. It is a response to limits. Reason has limits. Faith arises at those limits. When either refuses to recognize its boundary, conflict becomes inevitable. The problem is not that humans possess both. The problem is that humans demand absolute authority from one of them. When faith claims total truth, reason must rebel. When reason claims total sufficiency, faith must return. Humans suffer most when they pretend one can replace the other entirely. This is why, throughout history, attempts to destroy faith through reason have failed, and attempts to destroy reason through faith have eventually collapsed. The human mind requires accuracy to survive the world, but the human psyche requires meaning to survive existence. Faith answers the question of endurance. Reason answers the question of reality. When faith stays where reality ends, it complements reason. When it crosses that boundary, it becomes its enemy. And when reason stays where evidence applies, it liberates. When it crosses into existential finality, it becomes hollow. This is the balance humanity has never mastered and never abandoned, because faith does not exist to explain the world, and reason does not exist to comfort the soul. They were never meant to replace each other. They were meant to restrain each other, and this is why their tension defines human history, rather than destroys it. Faith came before reason because the first humans lived in a world that could not be explained, but had to be endured. Long before logic, science, or structured thought existed, humans were already aware of danger, loss, and death. They did not understand the mechanisms of nature, but they felt its power. Lightning struck without warning. Animals killed without pattern. Disease appeared suddenly. The sun rose and disappeared. The seasons changed unpredictably. For early humans, this world was not neutral. It was threatening, and the human brain evolved first to survive, not to understand. Reason requires distance, time, and stability. Faith requires only fear and awareness. This is why faith appeared first. Early humans could not explain the world because explanation requires causality and abstraction. They lacked language for theory and tools for measurement, but they did not lack emotion. They felt terror, awe, hope, and despair. When the mind cannot trace cause, it assigns intention. This is the birth of belief. The storm was angry. The hunt failed because something was displeased. Death was not random, it was decided. This was not ignorance, it was pattern seeking under pressure. The human brain is wired to search for meaning because meaning reduces anxiety. If events have intention, they can be negotiated with. If they are random, they cannot. Faith transformed randomness into relationship. Early humans did not believe because they wanted comfort. They believed because disbelief offered nothing but chaos. Without belief, the world was an uncontrollable threat. With belief, it became a system that could be appeased, understood emotionally, and endured. Myths were not entertainment. They were survival tools. They organized fear into stories. Stories created order. Order reduced panic. This psychological function came long before rational explanation. When humans gathered in groups, shared beliefs created cohesion. Faith unified behavior long before laws existed. It told people what was allowed, what was forbidden, and why obedience mattered. Reason was not rejected, it was simply unavailable. Reason demands repeated observation, comparison, and correction. This takes generations. Faith works instantly. It provides answers immediately, even if those answers are false. But for survival, false certainty is often safer than honest confusion. This is why faith dominated early human consciousness. It was not chosen. It emerged automatically as the mind's defense against the unknown. As generations passed, faith solidified into ritual. Ritual created predictability. Predictability created psychological safety. In a dangerous world, feeling safe mattered more than being correct. This explains why belief systems became deeply rooted before reason had time to grow. When reason finally began to develop, it did not appear as an alternative to faith, but as a refinement of survival. It emerged when humans could afford to ask questions rather than react emotionally. But by then, faith was already woven into identity, culture, and meaning. This made conflict inevitable, because faith was not simply an explanation. It was a foundation. Early humans did not choose faith over reason. They lived in a stage where reason had not yet arrived. Faith was not wrong for its time. It was necessary. The problem began when faith refused to retreat. Once reason became capable of explaining reality. This is where history's longest conflict begins, not between truth and error, but between an ancient survival mechanism and a newer analytical one. Faith came first because fear came first. Reason came later because stability allowed it. And humanity has been struggling to balance the two ever since. Nature was the first authority humans ever faced. And it was absolute. The land provided food and took it away without warning. The sky gave light and darkness without explanation. Rivers flooded, forests burned. Animals hunted humans as much as humans hunted them. For early humans, nature was not a background. It was a living force that decided survival and extinction. They had no concept of neutrality. Every natural event felt intentional. When lightning struck the earth, it was not seen as electricity. It was violence from above. When the ground stopped producing food, it was not climate. It was punishment. Hunger was not misfortune. It was judgment. This is how faith began, not as worship, but as interpretation. Death deepened this need beyond repair. Early humans could not understand why someone alive, one moment was gone the next. The body remained, but the person vanished. This disappearance was unbearable if accepted as final. If death was random, then life had no guarantee. If it was intentional, then it could be explained, negotiated, or delayed. Faith turned death into passage, journey, or transformation. Not because it was true, but because finality was psychologically impossible to accept. Lightning symbolized this fear perfectly. It came without warning, with sound and destruction. It killed instantly. It ignored strength and status. Early humans could not outrun it or fight it. To face such power without explanation would mean accepting total helplessness. Faith softened that terror by assigning intention. If lightning was anger, it could be avoided through ritual. If it was a message, it could be interpreted. Faith did not remove danger, it removed helplessness. Kaluk completed the cycle. Hunger is not just physical pain, it is existential panic. It threatens identity, group survival, and future generations. When food disappeared, early humans did not see failed systems. They saw broken relationships with the unseen. A hungry group needed more than strategy. They needed reassurance that survival was still possible. Faith provided that reassurance. It said scarcity had meaning. It said endurance mattered. It said suffering was temporary or purposeful. This allowed groups to persist instead of collapsing into chaos. Together, nature, death, lightning, and hunger created a world that felt hostile, judging, and unpredictable. The human brain could not accept such a world without structure. Faith became that structure. It connected events into stories. Stories became explanations. Explanations became beliefs. These beliefs did not explain reality accurately, but they explained it emotionally. This was enough. Faith allowed early humans to wake up in a world that might kill them and still move forward. It replaced paralysis with action and terror with ritual. Before reason could calculate, before science could measure, faith allowed humans to endure forces they could not escape. This is why faith was not optional, it was inevitable. It was the mind's response to a world that offered no mercy and no explanations. And once this response took root, it became inseparable from human consciousness, struggling to balance the two ever since. Faith is not born from wisdom or ignorance, it is born from fear. When humans first became aware of their vulnerability, faith emerged automatically as a psychological defense. Fear came before explanation, and explanation was required to survive it. The early human did not fear the unknown as an abstract idea. They feared immediate death, loss, starvation, and disappearance. Fear was constant and overwhelming, and the human mind could not remain functional under permanent terror. Faith appeared as a way to soften that terror by reshaping it into meaning. Fear without meaning paralyzes. Fear with meaning becomes manageable. This is the core function of faith. When danger feels intentional, it can be reasoned with emotionally. When suffering feels random, it destroys the mind. Faith transforms randomness into purpose, and purpose reduces panic. This is why fear and belief are inseparable. Fear creates the need for certainty, and faith provides it instantly. Faith does not remove danger, it removes helplessness. By believing that events happen for a reason, humans regain a sense of control, even when none exists. This illusion of control is psychologically stabilizing. Without it, the nervous system collapses into constant alertness. Early humans believed not because belief was logical, but because disbelief offered no refuge. A world without intention is terrifying. A world with intention can be negotiated with, prayed to, or obeyed. Faith turned fear into relationship. Storms were no longer chaos, they were messages. Death was no longer final, it was transition. Hunger was no longer meaningless, it was a test. Faith did not deny fear, it organized it. This organization allowed humans to act instead of freeze. Fear also created obedience. When belief systems formed, they provided rules that promised safety. If you follow the ritual, you are protected. If you obey, you survive. This linked faith directly to behavior. Faith became a guide for action in an unpredictable world. Reason was too slow for this role. Reason needs evidence, time, and correction. Fear demands immediate response. Faith works instantly. It offers answers before questions are fully formed. This is why faith dominated early consciousness. It met fear at the speed fear operates. As societies developed, fear did not disappear. It changed form. Disease, war, death, and loss remained. faith adapted to continue managing them. When faith is stripped away without replacement, fear returns in raw form. This is why belief systems often strengthen during crisis. Fear reactivates the need for meaning. Even in modern societies, faith reappears when control is lost. People turn to beliefs, ideologies, and narratives that restore certainty. Fear always seeks structure, and faith provides it. This reveals a difficult truth. Faith is not primarily about gods or truth. It is about fear management. When fear is overwhelming, faith feels necessary. When fear recedes, reason can emerge, but fear never disappears completely. This is why faith never disappears either. It changes shape, but its function remains the same. It answers the oldest question the human mind ever asked. Not what is true, but how do I survive, knowing I can die? Reason had not yet developed because early humans lived in conditions that did not allow slow reflection, analysis, or systematic thinking. Their lives were governed by immediacy. Every decision was tied directly to survival. There was no time to observe patterns over long periods, to test hypotheses, or to compare outcomes across generations. The environment demanded reaction, not contemplation. Reason requires stability. It requires repetition, records, and the ability to separate emotion from judgment. Early humans had none of these. They moved constantly. They faced sudden threats. They lacked language precise enough to express abstract causality. Without language, reason cannot fully form, because reason is not just thinking, it is structured thinking. It depends on symbols, logic, and shared understanding. Fear dominated early consciousness, and fear shuts down analytical processing. When the brain is under constant threat, it prioritizes rapid emotional responses over careful evaluation. This is a biological limitation, not a failure. Intuition activates faster than logic. Faith operates at the speed of intuition. Reason does not. This is why belief systems emerged before rational systems. Early humans did not choose faith instead of reason. They operated in a stage where reason was biologically and culturally premature. The human brain itself was still evolving. The parts responsible for abstract reasoning, long-term planning, and symbolic logic were not yet dominant. Emotional centers guided behavior because they ensured immediate survival. Reason develops only when basic needs are met. When food is secure, when danger is reduced, when life expectancy increases, space opens for questioning rather than reacting. Until then, thinking beyond the moment is a liability. Reason also depends on error tolerance. To reason is to fail, to revise, and to doubt. But early failure often meant death. There was no margin for experimentation. Belief provided ready-made answers that reduced hesitation. Hesitation in a dangerous world is fatal. This is why rituals, traditions, and inherited beliefs were followed without question. They eliminated decision paralysis. Reason introduces uncertainty. Faith removes it. In an unstable environment, removing uncertainty matters more than accuracy. As generations passed, small pockets of stability emerged. Agriculture reduced constant movement. Storage reduced immediate hunger. Communities grew, languages developed, symbols became shared. Memory extended beyond individuals. This is when reason began to surface slowly, not as opposition to faith, but as an extension of survival strategies. Reason did not replace belief overnight. It emerged cautiously, limited to practical problems like tool-making, planning, and prediction. The deeper questions of existence remained under faith's control, because reason had not yet earned trust in those domains. This explains why belief systems became deeply rooted before rational inquiry could challenge them. Faith was older, stronger, and emotionally integrated long before reason could compete. When reason finally matured, it entered a world already shaped by belief. This imbalance made conflict inevitable. Reason was new, faith was ancient. One questioned, the other protected, one destabilized, the other preserved. This is why reason feels threatening to faith and why faith feels primitive to reason. But historically, this tension is not moral, it is developmental. Reason did not arrive late because it was weaker. It arrived late because the world had to become safe enough to allow it. And humanity has been negotiating this delayed arrival ever since. Myths were the first system of explanation because early humans needed answers before they were capable of evidence, logic, or scientific reasoning. A myth was not a story told for entertainment. It was a functional framework that connected events into meaning. Before mathematics, before philosophy, before written language, myths explained why the world behaved as it did. They answered questions that reason could not yet approach. Where does the sun go at night? Why does the earth shake? Why do people die? Why does suffering exist? These were not abstract curiosities, they were urgent psychological problems, and myths solved them by turning chaos into narrative. A narrative is easier to accept than randomness, because randomness offers no prediction, no intention, and no comfort. Myths gave the universe personality. They transformed nature into agents with desires, emotions, and motives. When something has intention, it becomes explainable at an emotional level. Early humans did not need correct explanations. They needed survivable ones. Myths linked cause and effect through story rather than logic. If a harvest failed, it was not weather, it was anger. If lightning struck, it was not physics, it was warning. This allowed humans to feel oriented in an unpredictable world. Myths also standardized understanding. When a group shared the same story, they shared the same reality. This created cohesion. Shared belief reduced conflict and coordinated behavior. Myths told people when to plant, when to hunt, when to fear, and when to hope. They were calendars, moral codes, and survival manuals combined into one. Because myths were shared orally, they adapted over time. They absorbed new experiences and reshaped themselves without breaking. This flexibility made them powerful. They could evolve without demanding proof. Myths also provided moral structure. They explained not only how the world worked, but how humans should act within it. Good behavior pleased the gods. Bad behavior brought disaster. This linked ethics to survival long before law existed. Myths therefore regulated behavior more effectively than force. They worked internally through belief rather than punishment. From a cognitive perspective, myths were the brain's way of simplifying overwhelming complexity. The human mind cannot process infinite variables. Myths reduced the world into understandable patterns. They replaced uncertainty with familiarity. This reduced anxiety and allowed focus on immediate survival. Reason could not yet compete with this efficiency. Reason requires doubt. Myths eliminate it. Doubt slows action. Action was essential. Myths also preserved memory. Before writing, history existed as story. Myths encoded lessons about danger, resources, and social order into symbolic narratives. These stories survived generations because they were emotionally charged. Emotion ensures memory. This is why myths endured long after their practical origins were forgotten. As time passed, myths hardened into traditions and then into religions. The original explanatory function remained, but authority increased. What began as survival narrative became sacred truth. At that point, myths stopped evolving freely. They demanded preservation. This is when conflict with reason became possible. But at their origin, myths were not false science. They were pre-scientific sense-making systems. They were the first attempt to explain existence using the only tools available: emotion, imagination, and narrative. Before reason could measure, the human mind needed something that could hold reality together. Myths did that. They were not errors, they were foundations, and without them, human consciousness would not have survived long enough for reason to ever appear. Faith protected humans from fear at a time when reason was not yet available as a tool. The earliest humans lived under constant threat, and their nervous systems were never at rest. Predators, hunger, disease, natural disasters, and death surrounded them daily. Without explanation, these forces created overwhelming psychological pressure. A mind exposed to continuous fear without meaning collapses into paralysis. Reason could not intervene because reason requires distance, analysis, and stability. Early humans had none of these. What they had was fear, and fear demanded immediate relief. Faith provided that relief by transforming terror into structure. It did not remove danger, but it reduced panic. By believing that frightening events had intention, humans could emotionally process them. Fear without intention feels endless. Fear with intention feels manageable. If something is caused, it can be responded to. If something is random, it cannot. Faith turned randomness into order and order into endurance. This allowed humans to function instead of freezing. In a world where reason had not yet developed, faith acted as psychological armor. It absorbed fear before it destroyed cognition. It offered explanations fast enough to keep the mind stable. Reason works slowly. It evaluates. Faith works instantly. It reassures. This speed mattered because hesitation often meant death. Faith also provided emotional continuity. When someone died, the loss did not become absolute disappearance. Faith framed death as transition or continuation. This softened grief enough to allow communities to survive loss after loss. Without this framing, constant mourning would have fractured social bonds. Faith also protected group cohesion. Shared beliefs synchronized fear responses. When everyone feared the same forces and trusted the same explanations, collective action became possible. This reduced internal conflict in moments when unity meant survival. Reason could not yet perform this role because it had not formed shared methods or language. Faith filled that gap. It created a common emotional reality long before a common rational one existed. From a biological perspective, this makes sense. The human brain evolved emotional regulation systems before analytical ones. The amygdala reacts faster than the cortex. Faith aligns with this architecture. It calms fear at its source. Reason arrives later and corrects understanding once fear is manageable. This sequence is critical. Fear must be reduced before reasoning can occur. Early humans could not reason their way out of terror. They needed to survive it first. Faith allowed that survival. It gave the mind something to hold on to when nothing else was available. This does not make faith true. It makes it necessary at that stage of human development. The problem begins only when faith refuses to step aside, once fear decreases and reason becomes capable. This is where protection turns into restriction. But in its origin, faith was not the enemy of reason. It was the condition that allowed reason to one day emerge. By protecting humans from psychological collapse, faith preserved the mind long enough for rational thought to develop. When reason was absent, faith carried humanity forward, not as enlightenment, but as endurance. And without that endurance, there would have been no thinkers, no questions, and no reason to speak of at all. Faith becomes a system the moment it stops existing, only inside the individual, and begins organizing the behavior of the group. At first, belief is personal and instinctive. It answers fear and uncertainty on an emotional level. But as human groups grow larger, shared survival requires coordination, and coordination requires rules. This is where faith transforms. It moves from inner reassurance to external structure. What once comforted the mind begins to regulate action. When beliefs are shared, they create expectations. When expectations are repeated, they become norms. And when norms are enforced, faith turns into a system. This system tells people not only why the world behaves as it does, but how they must behave within it. At this stage, faith is no longer optional. It becomes identity. Belonging to the group means accepting the belief. To reject it is to risk exclusion, which in early societies often meant death. Faith systems emerge because they are efficient. They provide ready-made answers that do not require debate. They reduce uncertainty by fixing meaning in place. They synchronize behavior without constant negotiation. This makes them powerful tools for stability. Fear still exists, but now it is managed collectively rather than individually. The system absorbs anxiety and redistributes it as obedience. Rituals emerge to reinforce this structure. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates authority. Once authority forms, faith gains permanence. It no longer adapts freely. It must be preserved because the system depends on consistency. At this point, belief hardens into doctrine. Doctrine simplifies complexity into rules. Rules create predictability. Predictability creates order. Order feels like safety, and safety becomes more valuable than truth. When faith becomes a system, it begins to define morality. Actions are no longer judged by consequence alone, but by alignment with belief. Good becomes obedience. Bad becomes deviation. This internalizes control. People police themselves because disobedience threatens not just punishment, but meaning itself. Faith systems also create hierarchy. Some interpret belief, others follow. This division concentrates power in those who claim authority over meaning. The system no longer exists only to protect people from fear. It begins to protect itself from challenge. Any question becomes destabilizing because it threatens coherence. Once faith reaches this stage, it resists change aggressively. Not because it is fragile, but because it is foundational. To alter belief is to alter identity, order, and legitimacy. This is where tension with reason becomes unavoidable. Reason asks why systems exist. Faith systems answer because they must. This is not a dialogue, it is a defense mechanism. Faith as a system fears collapse more than error, because collapse returns chaos, and chaos is the original terror faith was created to prevent. What began as psychological protection becomes social control. This transformation is not malicious, it is functional. But once complete, faith no longer serves only human survival. It demands human submission. At that moment, faith has fully become a system. And systems do not exist to be questioned. They exist to endure. Religion becomes the fusion of order and meaning. The moment faith solidifies into an unquestionable structure. At this stage, belief is no longer only about fear or comfort. It becomes a blueprint for reality. Religion explains where the world came from, why it exists, how humans should live, and what happens after death. This total explanation creates order. Order reduces chaos. Chaos threatens survival. For societies struggling with instability, order feels sacred. This is why religion becomes powerful. It does not merely describe existence, it organizes it. Everything gains a place, every action gains a reason, every suffering gains an explanation. Meaning fills the gaps where uncertainty once lived. But for this system to function, reason must change its role. Reason is no longer allowed to question the structure. It is permitted only to serve it. The role of reason becomes obedience. Reason is used to interpret sacred rules, not to challenge them. It explains how to follow doctrine more precisely, not whether the doctrine is valid. This is a critical transformation. Reason is not destroyed, it is redirected. When religion governs society, reason becomes a tool of justification rather than investigation. It is allowed to refine belief, but not to revise it. Questions that strengthen order are encouraged. Questions that threaten meaning are forbidden. This creates an environment where intelligence exists, but curiosity is dangerous. Smart minds are valued only when they reinforce the system. Reason learns to stay within boundaries. It becomes disciplined into loyalty rather than exploration. This obedience is not enforced only through punishment, it is internalized. People learn that questioning meaning risks chaos, and chaos risks fear. The memory of fear still lives beneath the structure. Religion promises protection from that fear, but only if order is maintained. This creates a psychological contract. Obey and the world makes sense. Disobey and meaning collapses. Reason adapts to survive inside this contract. It learns not to push beyond what is permitted, because pushing too far threatens belonging, safety, and identity. In this system, truth becomes secondary to stability. The purpose of belief is no longer accuracy, but coherence. Religion does not ask whether it is true, it asks whether it holds society together. As long as it does, reason must comply. This is why religious systems often tolerate complex theology but punish simple doubt. Detailed explanations strengthen authority. Direct questions weaken it. Reason is therefore encouraged to elaborate, but not to doubt. This turns reason inward, away from reality, and toward preservation. When reason serves obedience, it becomes efficient but narrow. It can build institutions, rituals, and moral systems, but it cannot correct foundational error. This creates long-term stagnation. Progress slows not because intelligence disappears, but because it is confined. History shows that during these periods, reason survives underground. It adapts, it waits, it expresses itself cautiously through philosophy, art, or symbolism, until stability increases and fear recedes. Then reason begins to remember its original function, not to obey, but to ask why. And when that happens, the balance between order and meaning begins to fracture. Once again, reason becomes dangerous, not because it is destructive, but because it reminds humanity that order without truth eventually collapses, and meaning enforced through obedience cannot last forever. Questioning becomes dangerous the moment belief stops being personal and becomes structural. When faith turns into the foundation of social order, any question threatens more than an idea. It threatens stability, identity, and survival. In early societies, belief was not just a way of understanding the world, it was the framework that held people together. Shared faith synchronized behavior, values, and expectations. When everyone believed the same story, they lived in the same reality. This reduced conflict and made cooperation possible. Faith became the glue that held society together, and glue cannot tolerate cracks. A question is a crack. It introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty spreads quickly. Once doubt enters a shared belief system, it does not stay isolated. It forces comparison, choice, and disagreement. These are dangerous in fragile societies where unity is more valuable than accuracy. When survival depends on cohesion, divergence feels like betrayal. This is why questioning belief became socially unacceptable long before it became legally forbidden. To ask why was to imply that the shared explanation might be incomplete, and incompleteness threatened order. If the gods could be wrong, then rituals might fail. If rituals might fail, then protection might disappear. This chain of thought led directly back to fear, the fear faith was designed to contain. When someone questioned belief, they were not seen as curious, they were seen as reckless, someone willing to risk chaos for knowledge. Societies responded by marking such individuals as dangerous, immoral, or corrupt, not because they were wrong, but because they endangered cohesion. Faith systems therefore evolved defenses. They labeled doubt as sin, heresy, or arrogance. This moralized obedience. People did not just follow belief, they defended it emotionally, because defending belief felt like defending the group itself. Reason was allowed only within boundaries. It could interpret but not interrogate. It could explain but not dismantle. This kept the system stable. Faith worked as social glue because it aligned fear, hope, and identity into a single narrative. Belonging meant believing. To believe differently meant isolation. In early societies, isolation was often fatal. This is why most people did not question even when doubts arose. Self-censorship became a survival instinct. Faith did not need constant enforcement. It enforced itself through belonging. When belief defines who is inside and who is outside, it becomes more powerful than any law. Questioning becomes dangerous not because ideas are fragile, but because societies built on belief fear fragmentation. More than injustice, more than error, more than untruth. Fragmentation returns chaos, and chaos is the original enemy faith exists to prevent. This is why faith endured for so long and resisted reason so fiercely. It was not merely an explanation of reality, it was the adhesive of civilization, and when reason pressed against it, the threat was not intellectual. It was existential. The first time humans truly asked why was the moment belief stopped being enough and curiosity became dangerous. This question did not arise from rebellion, but from observation. As societies stabilized and fear slowly loosened its grip, humans gained the mental space to notice patterns. They saw that seasons followed cycles, that floods returned predictably, that stars moved with consistency, that illness did not always strike randomly. This consistency planted doubt, not doubt in gods, but doubt in randomness. The question why did not immediately deny belief. It challenged necessity. If events followed patterns, perhaps they did not require intention. This was a radical shift. For the first time, human attention moved from appeasing unseen forces to understanding visible processes. The question why was not emotional. It was analytical. It asked for causes rather than motives. This marked the birth of rational thought. Explaining nature without gods did not begin as atheism. It began as efficiency. If rain followed seasons rather than prayers, planning mattered more than sacrifice. If disease spread through contact rather than curses, behavior mattered more than ritual. This way of thinking quietly undermined belief systems by removing their practical authority. When explanations moved from divine will to natural cause, control shifted from priests to observers. This made the why question threatening not only spiritually, but politically. Belief systems relied on exclusive access to meaning. The moment nature could be understood by anyone who observed carefully, authority weakened. The attempt to explain nature without gods did not feel like liberation. It felt like loss. Gods had provided intention, purpose, and moral framing. Natural explanations provided none. They replaced meaning with mechanism. This frightened people because mechanism does not care about justice or suffering. It simply operates. The why question therefore divided human experience. It offered power over the physical world, but stripped comfort from the emotional one. This tension defined early philosophy. Thinkers who pursued natural explanations were not trying to destroy faith. They were trying to reduce uncertainty, but by doing so, they exposed a deeper uncertainty. If nature does not intend, then suffering is not punishment. If disasters are not messages, then they cannot be negotiated with. This returned humans to helplessness at a new level. Intellectual clarity increased. Emotional security decreased. This is why societies resisted the why question. They tolerated practical reasoning but rejected existential implication. Reason was allowed to explain how tools worked, but not why the universe existed. When thinkers crossed that boundary, they were labeled dangerous. The why question expanded beyond nature and turned inward. Why do laws exist? Why do rulers rule? Why must we obey? These questions threatened systems built on inherited authority. The attempt to explain nature without gods inevitably led to the attempt to explain power without divinity. This is why the first rational thinkers faced hostility. They did not merely offer new explanations. They disrupted the balance between order and meaning. The why question revealed that understanding could exist without belief, and once that possibility appeared, it could not be erased. This moment marks the true beginning of conflict between faith and reason, not because reason attacked faith, but because it demonstrated independence. From that point on, belief could no longer claim exclusivity over explanation. The human mind had tasted a new kind of freedom. Not freedom from fear, but freedom from unquestioned answers. And that freedom came with a cost humanity has been negotiating ever since. Reason shakes faith because it changes the rules of certainty. Faith survives by providing immediate answers, while reason refuses answers that cannot be tested. This difference alone is destabilizing. Faith says, "This is how the world is." Reason asks, "How do you know?" Faith closes questions to protect meaning. Reason opens questions to approach truth. When reason enters a belief system, it does not attack its conclusions directly. It attacks its foundation by demanding justification. This is why faith feels threatened even when reason is calm. Reason does not shout, it asks, and every unanswered question weakens certainty. Faith offers answers because answers reduce anxiety. An unanswered question leaves the mind exposed. Reason demands proof because without proof, error multiplies. The moment proof becomes necessary, belief loses its immunity. Faith explains events by intention. Gods wanted it. This happened for a reason. Reason explains events by causality. This happened because of conditions. When intention is replaced by cause, meaning dissolves into mechanism. This feels like loss to faith because faith does not exist to explain how things work. It exists to explain why enduring them matters. Reason does not care whether its explanations comfort. Reason cares whether they hold. Faith holds people together. Reason pulls ideas apart to see if they stand. This pulling apart is what faith experiences as erosion. The shaking does not happen instantly, it happens slowly. At first, reason is allowed to operate in small areas, tools, architecture, medicine. But once proof works there, it becomes tempting to apply it everywhere. And once applied everywhere, faith must defend itself with authority rather than explanation. At this point, faith no longer competes on understanding. It competes on obedience, because obedience preserves answers without proof. Reason threatens this by showing that answers can be provisional. Reason says beliefs can be revised. Faith says beliefs must be preserved. This opposition is irreconcilable at the structural level. A system that survives on fixed meaning cannot coexist comfortably with a process that survives on correction. Reason also exposes contradictions. Faith can tolerate contradiction because it prioritizes coherence over consistency. Reason cannot. It demands internal alignment. When contradictions appear, reason insists on resolution. Faith often resolves contradiction through mystery. This satisfies emotion but frustrates intellect. Reason does not accept mystery as an endpoint. This refusal is seen as arrogance or disrespect, because mystery protects belief from collapse. Reason removes that protection by insisting that mystery is a temporary placeholder, not a final answer. This difference explains why reason feels aggressive, even when it is passive. It does not need to attack. It destabilizes by existing. Faith gives answers to stop fear. Reason demands proof to stop error. These goals conflict because fear and error operate differently. A wrong belief can feel safe. A correct one can feel unbearable. This is why societies often side with faith when stability is threatened, and with reason when progress is needed. Reason shakes faith by introducing doubt, and doubt spreads. Faith responds by offering stronger answers, clearer rules, and firmer boundaries. This escalation defines much of history, periods of questioning followed by periods of enforcement. Reason undermines belief not by denying it, but by refusing to accept it without evidence. This refusal exposes the difference between comfort and correctness. The shaking continues because neither side can abandon its function. Faith cannot stop answering because silence invites fear. Reason cannot stop questioning because acceptance invites error. This is why the conflict never resolves. Reason will always demand proof, and faith will always offer answers first. Because one exists to know and the other exists to endure. Those who question are punished because questioning threatens the structure that belief systems depend on. In societies governed by faith, truth is not discovered, it is declared. Once truth is declared, its function is no longer to be examined, but to be protected. When a person asks questions, they are not merely seeking understanding, they are testing the legitimacy of authority. This is why questioning becomes dangerous. It shifts power from the system to the individual. Faith-based orders do not collapse because they are false. They collapse because they are questioned. This is why systems built on belief respond to doubt, with force rather than argument. They cannot allow truth to be negotiated, because negotiation implies uncertainty, and uncertainty invites fear. The fear faith was designed to eliminate. When questioning spreads, it does not remain intellectual, it becomes social. People begin to compare beliefs, they begin to choose, and choice fractures unity. In fragile societies, fracture means chaos. This is why belief systems demand faith rather than truth. Truth can be debated, faith cannot. Truth invites revision, faith demands loyalty. In a faith-based structure, the highest virtue is not accuracy but obedience. To believe correctly matters less than to believe consistently. A correct belief that causes doubt is more dangerous than an incorrect belief that maintains order. This is why truth becomes secondary. When faith replaces truth as the central requirement, reason becomes a liability. Those who question are labeled immoral, arrogant, or corrupt, not because they are wrong, but because they undermine cohesion. Punishment serves a psychological purpose. It teaches others that curiosity has consequences. The goal is not to eliminate questions, but to make questioning feel unsafe. Once fear is attached to doubt, self-censorship emerges. People stop asking not because they are convinced, but because they are afraid. This is far more effective than force. Faith systems understand this instinctively. They do not need to silence everyone, only enough to set an example. Over time, belief becomes internalized. People defend the system themselves. They attack questioners on behalf of authority. This is how faith maintains control without constant violence. When truth is replaced by faith, consistency replaces evidence. The system no longer asks what is real, it asks what is allowed. Reality becomes subordinate to meaning, meaning becomes subordinate to order, and order becomes sacred. This is why heresy is treated as a crime rather than an error. An error can be corrected, a crime must be punished. The act of questioning becomes moral failure rather than intellectual curiosity. This moral framing is crucial. It transforms obedience into virtue and doubt into sin. Once this transformation is complete, reason loses its ground. It cannot operate where inquiry itself is forbidden. Faith no longer competes with reason, it dominates it. This domination creates long periods of stability, but also stagnation. Progress slows because error cannot be corrected. Falsehoods persist because correction threatens identity. History shows that during these periods, truth survives only in fragments, in whispers, in exile, in coded language. It waits for moments when fear weakens and stability grows. When punishment loses its power, reason returns. The cycle repeats, but the pattern remains clear. Where faith requires loyalty, truth becomes dangerous. Where obedience is sacred, curiosity is punished. And where belief replaces truth, the cost is not only knowledge, but human potential. Reason is silenced, but it does not disappear because questioning is not an external habit that can be erased. It is an internal function of the human mind. When belief systems suppress reason, they do not destroy it, they push it underground. Silencing reason changes how it speaks, not whether it exists. When questioning becomes dangerous, reason adapts. It learns to whisper instead of shout. It hides behind symbols, stories, art, and metaphor. It survives in private thought, in quiet observation, in practical problem solving. Even in societies where faith demands obedience, people still use reason to survive, to build, to heal, to plan. This creates a contradiction. Reason is forbidden in theory, but required in practice. Authority allows reason where it serves order and forbids it where it threatens meaning. This selective suppression keeps reason alive but constrained. It cannot vanish because daily life depends on it. Even the most rigid belief system relies on rational thinking to function. Agriculture, architecture, medicine, warfare, and administration all require observation, calculation, and correction. These activities train the mind to recognize patterns and inconsistencies, and once the mind learns to recognize inconsistency, it cannot unlearn it. This is why reason never fully submits. It waits. When fear is high, reason retreats. When stability increases, reason resurfaces. History shows that periods of strict control are followed by periods of quiet questioning that grow over time. Reason accumulates unnoticed. It spreads through conversation, through teaching, through imitation. It does not announce itself because announcement invites punishment. It grows silently until suppression becomes inefficient. At that point, authority must increase force or adapt. This is where cracks appear. Reason also survives through memory. Knowledge cannot be fully erased once experienced. Even when texts are burned, methods remain. When thinkers are silenced, their ideas persist in others. This persistence frustrates systems built on fixed belief, because belief requires stasis and reason produces motion. The attempt to silence reason often strengthens it by defining its enemy. The forbidden becomes compelling. Curiosity intensifies under restriction. Doubt becomes private rather than public, but private doubt is more dangerous because it cannot be easily controlled. Reason also survives because it is cumulative. Each generation inherits tools, skills, and questions from the last. Even if answers are restricted, methods endure. These methods slowly expand the space reason occupies. When fear decreases, reason remembers its original role. Not to obey, but to ask. Not to preserve, but to test. This return feels sudden, but it is the result of long suppression, not sudden rebellion. The mind does not forget how to question. It only forgets when it is safe to do so. Once safety increases, questions resurface with force. This is why silencing reason never ends conflict. It postpones it. Suppression creates stability, but stability creates conditions for reason to grow. When authority weakens or meaning fractures, reason emerges to fill the gap. It offers not comfort, but clarity, and clarity becomes irresistible when old answers fail. This cycle explains why belief systems repeatedly face renewal or collapse. Reason does not need permission to exist. It only needs space. And space eventually appears whenever fear cannot sustain obedience forever. This is why reason outlasts repression. It is not louder than faith, but it is more patient. It waits until silence becomes unnecessary, and when it speaks again, it does so not as rebellion, but as inevitability. Doubt becomes sin the moment belief systems redefine questioning as moral failure rather than intellectual curiosity. In faith-centered societies, doubt is not treated as uncertainty. It is treated as disobedience. To doubt is not to misunderstand, but to rebel. This transformation is deliberate. Belief systems survive on stability, and stability requires emotional loyalty. When doubt appears, it introduces distance between the individual and the shared truth. That distance weakens cohesion. So doubt must be framed not as a question, but as a flaw in character. By turning doubt into sin, the system shifts the problem from ideas to identity. You are not wrong, you are impure. This is far more powerful than argument, because a wrong idea can be corrected. A sinful soul must be punished or redeemed. Doubt threatens faith because it cannot be controlled once allowed. A single unanswered question multiplies. It spreads quietly from mind to mind. It does not need permission. This makes doubt dangerous. The fastest way to stop its spread is to attach fear to it. When doubt becomes sin, people stop asking not because they are convinced, but because they are afraid of what doubt says about them. Fear replaces inquiry. Silence replaces thought. This moral framing also protects authority. If doubt is evil, authority is automatically good. Obedience becomes virtue. Questioning becomes corruption. The system no longer needs to defend its claims. It only needs to judge intentions. This is efficient control. Doubt is internal and invisible, so people begin policing themselves. They suppress their own questions before they are spoken. This self-censorship is the system's greatest success. Over time, people confuse faith with certainty. They forget that belief once answered fear, not truth. They learn that safety comes from submission, not understanding. Doubt becomes associated with chaos, loss, and danger. Not because doubt causes these things, but because belief systems link them emotionally. When disasters happen, doubt is blamed. When order collapses, questioners are accused. This reinforces the narrative that belief protects and doubt destroys. But doubt never disappears. It retreats inward. It becomes private reflection, quiet discomfort, unspoken tension. This hidden doubt is more corrosive than open questioning because it cannot be addressed. It grows without resolution. This creates societies that appear stable but are internally fragile. When belief systems finally weaken, stored doubt erupts suddenly. This makes collapse seem abrupt, but it is not. It is delayed. The sin of doubt was never doubt itself. It was the fear of losing control. By labeling doubt as sin, faith systems reveal their vulnerability. They cannot tolerate uncertainty because uncertainty reminds humans that belief is chosen, not inevitable. And once belief is recognized as choice, obedience loses its moral certainty. This is why doubt is feared. This is why it is moralized. This is why it is punished. And this is why, despite everything, doubt remains the beginning of every transformation reason has ever achieved. Faith is declared immutable the moment it becomes the foundation of order rather than a response to fear. When belief systems claim to be unchanging, they are not describing reality. They are protecting stability. An unchanging belief offers certainty. Certainty calms fear, and fear is the force faith was created to manage. This is why faith presents itself as eternal. If belief could change, then meaning could collapse, and if meaning collapses, chaos returns. Immutable faith promises safety by freezing truth in place. It says this was always true and will always be true. This removes responsibility from the present. If truth is fixed, humans do not need to question. They only need to obey. This is psychologically efficient. But reality does not stop changing. The world evolves. Knowledge expands. Conditions shift. For faith to remain immutable in a changing world, it must resist correction. This resistance creates tension because reason adapts while faith preserves. Reason treats error as temporary. Faith treats deviation as threat. When belief is declared unchangeable, any challenge becomes attack. Any revision becomes betrayal. This hardens boundaries and strengthens authority. Those who interpret faith gain power because interpretation becomes the only acceptable movement within a frozen structure. Change is allowed only as explanation, never as correction. This gives the illusion of flexibility while maintaining control. Immutable faith also shifts responsibility away from outcomes. If suffering persists, it is not because belief failed. It is because belief must not be questioned. Failure is reframed as human weakness, not systemic error. This protects the system from accountability. By claiming permanence, faith removes itself from the process of learning. But learning is how humans survive change. This creates long-term fragility. Stability is preserved in the short term, but adaptability is sacrificed. In moments of crisis, immutable systems crack because they cannot adjust. They can only enforce. When enforcement replaces understanding, obedience increases temporarily, but trust erodes beneath the surface. People comply outwardly while doubting inwardly. This hidden doubt accumulates. Immutable faith survives not because it is correct, but because it is defended. It relies on memory and tradition and fear of loss. When belief is inherited rather than chosen, it feels inevitable. But inevitability is not truth, it is habit. The claim that faith does not change is therefore not a statement about belief. It is a statement about power. It says this system must endure regardless of reality. Reason sees this as denial, because reason cannot operate where conclusions are final. This is why immutable faith and reason cannot reconcile. Immutable faith closes the future. Reason opens it, and while faith insists on permanence, history shows a different pattern. Belief systems do change. They fracture, adapt, split, or collapse, but they deny this change while it happens. They rename it renewal, return, or purification. The language shifts to preserve the illusion of immutability. This illusion is necessary to maintain authority. Once belief admits it can change, it must explain why, and explanation invites questioning. This is why faith declares itself eternal. Not because it never changes, but because admitting change would mean admitting uncertainty, and uncertainty is the one thing faith exists to erase. Reason must obey the moment belief systems define truth as settled rather than discoverable. When faith becomes the ultimate authority, reason is no longer a path to understanding. It is reassigned as a servant. Its task is not to question foundations, but to maintain structure. Reason is permitted only where it reinforces belief, never where it threatens it. This creates a hierarchy of thought. At the top stands sacred truth, declared complete and eternal. Below it stands reason, allowed to operate only within approved boundaries. Reason can explain how to obey, not whether obedience is justified. This transformation is subtle but absolute. Reason is not banned, it is domesticated. It is taught discipline rather than curiosity. Intelligence is praised when it defends doctrine and condemned when it investigates origins. This teaches the mind to self-limit. People learn to think carefully, but not freely, to analyze, but not challenge, to understand, but not doubt. This obedience is framed as virtue because obedience preserves order, and order preserves meaning. When belief systems demand obedience from reason, they are protecting themselves from instability. Reason introduces alternatives. Alternatives introduce choice. Choice introduces disagreement, and disagreement fractures unity. Unity is valued more than truth in systems built on belief. This is why reason must submit. The cost of independent thought is seen as too high. The system cannot afford questions that it cannot answer conclusively. So it converts reason into justification rather than exploration. Reason becomes a tool for harmonizing contradictions instead of resolving them. When contradictions appear, reason is instructed to interpret them as mystery rather than error. This trains the mind to stop at the edge of inquiry. The moment understanding threatens certainty, obedience takes over. This creates a culture where thinking deeply is allowed, but thinking independently is dangerous. Reason learns loyalty, it learns caution, it learns silence. This obedience reshapes education, language, and values. Children are taught answers before questions. They memorize conclusions without tracing their origins. Reason is trained to accept inheritance as truth. This produces stability but limits growth. The obedient mind is efficient but fragile. It functions well inside known boundaries but struggles when reality changes. History shows that when reason is forced to obey, it does not vanish. It adapts. It learns to work indirectly. It expresses itself through art, science in narrow domains, or philosophy coded in abstraction. But it waits because obedience suppresses but does not eliminate inquiry. Once conditions change, once fear weakens or authority cracks, reason remembers its original role, not to obey, but to examine, not to preserve, but to test. This return feels disruptive because obedience-trained minds forget that reason was ever meant to be free. This is why periods of enforced obedience are followed by periods of intellectual upheaval. Reason resists permanent submission because obedience contradicts its function. Reason exists to evaluate, to compare, to correct. When it is ordered to obey, it becomes internally conflicted. It performs tasks, but it does not believe in their finality. This quiet resistance accumulates over generations, until one day obedience is no longer convincing. And when reason stops obeying, it does not do so violently. It simply resumes asking questions. And systems built on unquestioned belief cannot survive that indefinitely. Humans abandon thinking for comfort. Humans abandon thinking for comfort because thinking is exhausting and comfort is immediate. The human mind is capable of deep reflection, but it is not built to remain in constant uncertainty. To think seriously is to question assumptions, to face contradictions, to accept the possibility of being wrong. This process creates anxiety, instability, and responsibility. Comfort offers the opposite. It offers rest from doubt, relief from choice, and shelter from uncertainty. When belief systems provide ready-made answers, they remove the burden of thinking. Decisions no longer require evaluation. They require obedience. This feels safe. In a complex and threatening world, comfort becomes more valuable than truth. People do not stop thinking because they are incapable. They stop because thinking demands courage. The courage to live without guarantees. The courage to accept that some questions have no satisfying answers. Comfort replaces this courage with certainty. When someone believes they already possess the truth, thinking becomes unnecessary, and unnecessary effort is naturally avoided. This is not weakness, it is efficiency. The brain seeks stability. When beliefs provide emotional stability, they are defended even if they are false. This is why people often reject information that threatens their worldview. Not because the information is incorrect, but because it is disruptive. Thinking destabilizes identity. Comfort preserves it. When belief systems offer meaning, belonging, and moral clarity, they reduce existential stress. Questioning these systems threatens all three at once. It threatens who you are, where you belong, and how you should live. The cost of thinking becomes too high. So people trade inquiry for peace of mind. This trade is rarely conscious. It happens gradually. At first, questions are postponed, then they are avoided, then they are condemned. Finally, they are forgotten. Comfort becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. At this stage, thinking feels dangerous, not because it is hard, but because it threatens everything that feels secure. People begin to associate doubt with pain and belief with relief. This conditioning is powerful. It trains individuals to defend comfort instinctively. They protect belief not as an idea, but as emotional shelter. This explains why people may fiercely oppose questioning, even when it does not affect their daily lives. The threat is internal. Thinking might reopen uncertainty, and uncertainty reactivates fear. The fear faith was designed to manage. Reason demands effort without promising comfort. It offers clarity but no reassurance. It may reveal that suffering has no purpose, that justice is not guaranteed, that meaning must be created, not received. Many people are not willing to carry that weight. Comfort lifts it. Belief says someone else has already thought for you. This is appealing because thinking alone is isolating. Believing together is comforting. When communities reward obedience and punish curiosity, the choice becomes clear. Think and risk isolation or believe and belong. Most choose belonging. This does not erase reason. It suppresses it. People continue to think in small ways, practical ways, but avoid deeper reflection. This creates a divided mind. One part calculates reality, the other protects meaning. This division allows survival but limits growth. History shows that societies built on comfort resist change until comfort fails. When old answers no longer soothe, new questions emerge, and thinking returns not because it is desired but because comfort collapses. This cycle repeats because humans do not abandon thinking permanently. They abandon it temporarily in exchange for peace. And when peace becomes illusion, thinking becomes unavoidable again. Humans abandon free thought not because it is taken from them, but because carrying it becomes unbearable. Free thought demands responsibility. It requires the individual to judge, to choose, to doubt, and to live with the consequences of those choices. When a person thinks freely, there is no authority to hide behind, no doctrine to blame, no absolute answer to lean on. Every conclusion becomes personal, and personal conclusions are heavy. Free thought removes protection. It exposes the individual to uncertainty, conflict, and isolation. This exposure is exhausting. Belief systems offer relief. They provide conclusions without requiring the individual to earn them. They say, "This is true, follow it, and you will be safe." This transfer of responsibility is comforting. When meaning is inherited rather than created, the burden of thinking disappears. Humans are social beings. Belonging is essential to psychological survival. Free thought threatens belonging because it introduces difference. Difference creates distance. Distance creates risk. To think freely is to risk standing alone. Most people do not fear punishment as much as they fear isolation. This is why free thought is often surrendered voluntarily. When belief offers acceptance and questioning offers loneliness, the choice becomes emotional rather than rational. People choose safety, they choose familiarity, they choose shared meaning over personal truth. This choice is reinforced by fear of error. Free thought allows the possibility of being wrong. Belief eliminates that fear by declaring certainty. Once certainty is given, thinking feels redundant. Why search when the answer is already provided? This creates intellectual rest. People confuse rest with peace. They mistake silence of doubt for harmony. Over time, this surrender becomes invisible. People do not say, "I choose not to think." They say, "I already know." The identity shifts from seeker to believer. Free thought feels unnecessary and even dangerous. It threatens the structure that provides comfort, identity, and moral clarity. This is how obedience feels virtuous and curiosity feels reckless. Humans also abandon free thought because thinking reveals limits. It shows that many questions have no satisfying answers, that justice is incomplete, that meaning is fragile. Belief shields the mind from these truths. Free thought removes the shield. Not everyone is willing to face that exposure. This does not mean free thought disappears. It retreats. It survives in moments of crisis, loss, or contradiction. When belief fails to comfort, thinking returns. When answers stop working, questions reappear. This cycle shows that free thought is never fully destroyed. It is suspended. Humans place it aside to rest, to belong, to survive emotionally. but the capacity remains. Waiting, because free thought is not a luxury, it is a function, and when comfort collapses, that function reactivates. The tragedy is not that humans lose free thought. The tragedy is that they give it up willingly for peace they mistake for truth. And history shows that this peace never lasts forever. Why faith was shaken, science rises. Faith was shaken not because people suddenly stopped believing, but because belief stopped being the only way to explain reality. For centuries, faith survived because it answered questions no one else could answer. When reason was weak and fear was strong, belief dominated. But as stability increased and observation accumulated, a new force slowly emerged. Science did not begin as an attack on faith. It began as a method that asked not who intends, but what causes. Science rose when humans discovered that the world behaved consistently, regardless of belief. The stars moved whether they were worshipped or not. Diseases spread according to patterns, not moral judgment. Seasons followed cycles, not prayers. This realization was quiet but devastating because it showed that nature did not require intention to function. Cause replaced will, evidence replaced authority, and repeatability replaced tradition. Science weakened faith by succeeding where belief had promised but failed. It cured illness, it predicted motion, it explained phenomena once attributed to gods, and most importantly, it worked. The power of science was not philosophical, it was practical. When explanations produced results, they earned trust. Faith offered meaning, but science offered control. This shift changed priorities. When humans learned they could influence outcomes without appealing to the divine, the emotional dependence on belief weakened, not disappeared, but weakened. Faith was no longer necessary for survival in the same way. Science also introduced a dangerous idea that truth could be provisional, that knowledge could change. This directly conflicted with immutable belief. Science admitted uncertainty but corrected itself. Faith denied uncertainty to preserve order. As science advanced, faith faced a dilemma: adapt or resist. Some belief systems tried to reinterpret discoveries as divine design. Others rejected evidence outright, but the damage was already done. Science showed that explanations did not need sacred approval to be valid. This undermined the monopoly of belief on truth. The authority of faith was shaken not by argument, but by irrelevance in certain domains. Once people saw that the world could be understood without invoking gods, the question why believe changed to where believe. This relocation of faith was destabilizing. Faith lost territory. It was pushed from nature to morality, from physics to purpose. This retreat felt like loss because faith had once explained everything. Science also empowered individuals. Knowledge was no longer restricted to priests or elites. Anyone who observed carefully could participate. This democratization of understanding threatened hierarchical belief systems. Authority based on revelation could not compete with authority based on demonstration. The more science explained, the less fear dominated. And the less fear dominated, the less urgent faith felt. This does not mean faith vanished. It means its function changed. It stopped being the primary explanatory system and became a secondary meaning system. For many, this transition felt like betrayal. For others, it felt like liberation. But for belief systems built on total explanation, this was collapse. Faith was shaken because science did what faith never claimed to do consistently. It delivered results without demanding obedience. This exposed a painful truth. Belief was powerful because it was necessary. When necessity faded, so did unquestioned loyalty. This is why science did not destroy faith overnight. It eroded it slowly by proving that the universe could be understood without asking permission. And once that door opened, it could never be fully closed again. The concept of proof. Faith can no longer answer. The concept of proof changed everything because it shifted truth from declaration to demonstration. Proof does not ask who believes. It asks what can be shown. When proof enters human thinking, answers are no longer accepted because they are sacred. They are accepted because they work. This is where faith begins to struggle. Faith provides answers that calm fear, but proof demands answers that survive testing. When humans began to require proof, belief lost its immunity. An answer without evidence became insufficient. This did not happen overnight. It happened as methods improved. Measurement replaced interpretation. Repetition replaced revelation. Observation replaced authority. Proof introduced a new rule. If an explanation is true, it must hold regardless of who believes it. This rule is devastating to faith systems built on loyalty and obedience. Faith answers by meaning. It says this happened for a reason. Proof answers by cause. It says this happened because conditions produced it. When proof is required, appeal to intention fails, because intention cannot be tested. Proof does not reject belief emotionally. It ignores it methodologically. This indifference is what makes proof powerful and threatening. Faith can answer existential questions, but it cannot answer procedural ones. It cannot reliably predict outcomes. It cannot correct itself through failure. Proof welcomes error, because error refines understanding. Faith resists error because error threatens certainty. This difference becomes critical as knowledge accumulates. When proof succeeds repeatedly, it builds trust. When belief fails repeatedly, it loses authority. Not because it is meaningless, but because it is ineffective in certain domains. The demand for proof reveals the limits of faith. Faith cannot demonstrate. Faith cannot be repeated. Faith cannot be falsified. This makes it incompatible with systems that depend on reliability. Once humans experienced the benefits of proof in medicine, engineering, astronomy, and navigation, the standard changed. Answers were no longer judged by comfort, but by consequence. If something works, it earns legitimacy. If it does not, it loses it. This pragmatic shift weakens faith's explanatory role. Faith can still say why life matters, but it cannot say how the world operates with precision. When faith attempts to answer questions that proof can test, it fails, and repeated failure erodes trust. This is why faith retreats from nature into morality and purpose. Proof claims the physical world. Faith claims meaning, but the transition is not smooth because faith once explained everything. The arrival of proof fragments that totality. People begin to notice that some answers require evidence and others do not. This division destabilizes unified belief. When proof becomes the standard, answers that cannot be proven feel incomplete. This creates discomfort because meaning cannot be proven. Proof exposes a gap it cannot fill. Faith once filled that gap effortlessly, but now faith is questioned not for its comfort but for its validity. This is an impossible demand. Faith was never designed to meet proof. It was designed to meet fear. As proof rises, faith appears silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because its language no longer matches the question. Proof asks how, faith answers why. These answers no longer substitute for each other. This mismatch creates tension. When people demand proof from faith, faith cannot comply. When people demand meaning from proof, proof remains indifferent. This is why belief is shaken. Proof does not argue with faith. It renders it insufficient in domains it once ruled. And once humans accept that some answers must be proven, they cannot unlearn that expectation. The concept of proof changes the definition of truth. And in that new definition, faith cannot answer in the same way anymore. Not because it is false, but because it speaks to a different need. And that realization fractures the old unity between explanation and meaning forever. Reason explains. The collision turns into open war. Reason explains, and the conflict becomes open war. The moment explanation replaces obedience. When reason begins to explain the world successfully, it does more than offer alternatives. It removes necessity. Faith once held authority because no other system could explain reality in a reliable way. When reason explains movement, disease, light, and matter without invoking intention, belief systems lose their monopoly. This is not a quiet disagreement, it is a displacement. Explanation undermines command. When reason explains, people no longer need permission to understand. This is the moment collision turns violent. Not because reason attacks faith, but because faith recognizes replacement. When explanations work without belief, authority collapses. When authority collapses, systems defend themselves. The conflict shifts from ideas to power. Faith does not fight reason with logic. It fights it with control, because logic belongs to reason and control belongs to institutions. Once explanation threatens order, reason is labeled dangerous, immoral, or corrupting. Thinkers are punished, not for being wrong, but for being effective. The success of reason is its greatest threat. When reason explains how nature operates, it invites comparison. If this can be explained, what else can be? If natural law replaces divine will, what replaces divine law? If authority over the universe weakens, authority over society follows. This is why the conflict escalates into open war, because reason does not stop at nature. It moves toward ethics, politics, and power. It asks why rulers rule, why laws exist, why obedience is required. These questions dissolve sacred hierarchy. Once obedience is no longer justified by divine explanation, it must justify itself through force. This is when violence appears, not as debate but as suppression. The war is asymmetrical. Faith systems attack reason to preserve certainty. Reason does not attack faith directly. It simply continues explaining, and explanation is relentless. It spreads through education, practice, and results. You cannot imprison a method. You cannot burn an observation. You cannot execute repetition. This makes reason difficult to defeat. Authority responds by restricting access to knowledge, banning texts, controlling education, and moralizing curiosity. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to stop the process, because once explanation begins, it does not stop at approved boundaries. This is why the conflict feels existential. Faith is defending meaning and order. Reason is expanding understanding. They operate on different logics. But when reason enters domains once ruled by belief, the overlap becomes intolerable. Open war emerges because coexistence fails. One system requires fixed answers, the other requires revision. One survives on certainty, the other survives on doubt. When these systems compete for the same territory, compromise is impossible. History shows cycles of this war, periods of suppression followed by bursts of discovery, censorship followed by revolutions in thought. Reason retreats, regroups, and returns stronger each time, because explanation accumulates. Where faith defends the past, reason builds the future. This does not mean reason wins completely. It means belief loses its exclusivity. The war is not about truth. It is about who gets to define reality. And once reason proves it can explain reality without permission, the old order cannot recover its former power. The conflict never truly ends. It changes form because explanation cannot be undone. And once humans learn that understanding is possible without obedience, the return to unquestioned belief becomes impossible. This is why the collision becomes open war, not because humans choose conflict, but because systems that rely on silence cannot survive a world that understands how things work. Reason explains. The collision turns into open war. Reason explains, and the conflict becomes open war. The moment explanation replaces obedience. When reason begins to explain the world successfully, it does more than offer alternatives. It removes necessity. Faith once held authority because no other system could explain reality in a reliable way. When reason explains movement, disease, light, and matter without invoking intention, belief systems lose their monopoly. This is not a quiet disagreement, it is a displacement. Explanation undermines command. When reason explains, people no longer need permission to understand. This is the moment collision turns violent. Not because reason attacks faith, but because faith recognizes replacement. When explanations work without belief, authority collapses. When authority collapses, systems defend themselves. The conflict shifts from ideas to power. Faith does not fight reason with logic. It fights it with control, because logic belongs to reason and control belongs to institutions. Once explanation threatens order, reason is labeled dangerous, immoral, or corrupting. Thinkers are punished, not for being wrong, but for being effective. The success of reason is its greatest threat. When reason explains how nature operates, it invites comparison. If this can be explained, what else can be? If natural law replaces divine will, what replaces divine law? If authority over the universe weakens, authority over society follows. This is why the conflict escalates into open war, because reason does not stop at nature. It moves toward ethics, politics, and power. It asks why rulers rule, why laws exist, why obedience is required. These questions dissolve sacred hierarchy. Once obedience is no longer justified by divine explanation, it must justify itself through force. This is when violence appears, not as debate but as suppression. The war is asymmetrical. Faith systems attack reason to preserve certainty. Reason does not attack faith directly. It simply continues explaining, and explanation is relentless. It spreads through education, practice, and results. You cannot imprison a method. You cannot burn an observation. You cannot execute repetition. This makes reason difficult to defeat. Authority responds by restricting access to knowledge, banning texts, controlling education, and moralizing curiosity. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to stop the process, because once explanation begins, it does not stop at approved boundaries. This is why the conflict feels existential. Faith is defending meaning and order. Reason is expanding understanding. They operate on different logics. But when reason enters domains once ruled by belief, the overlap becomes intolerable. Open war emerges because coexistence fails. One system requires fixed answers, the other requires revision. One survives on certainty, the other survives on doubt. When these systems compete for the same territory, compromise is impossible. History shows cycles of this war, periods of suppression followed by bursts of discovery, censorship followed by revolutions in thought. Reason retreats, regroups, and returns stronger each time, because explanation accumulates. Where faith defends the past, reason builds the future. This does not mean reason wins completely. It means belief loses its exclusivity. The war is not about truth. It is about who gets to define reality. And once reason proves it can explain reality without permission, the old order cannot recover its former power. The conflict never truly ends. It changes form because explanation cannot be undone. And once humans learn that understanding is possible without obedience, the return to unquestioned belief becomes impossible. This is why the collision becomes open war, not because humans choose conflict, but because systems that rely on silence cannot survive a world that understands how things work. Why reason cannot explain everything. Reason says how, faith says. Why reason cannot explain everything because it was never designed to answer every type of human question. Reason explains mechanisms, not meaning. It tells us how things work, not why they should matter. Reason observes patterns, identifies causes, and builds explanations that can be tested and repeated. This makes it powerful, but also limited. When reason explains, it answers how light travels, how disease spreads, how planets move, how bodies age. It explains process and structure. But when humans ask why they suffer, why they love, why they must die, or why existence exists at all, reason falls silent, not because it is weak, but because these questions are not mechanical. They are existential. Reason operates in the realm of evidence. Faith operates in the realm of meaning. This difference creates confusion. When reason replaces faith in explaining nature, people expect it to replace faith everywhere. But reason cannot explain purpose because purpose is not observable. It cannot measure meaning because meaning is not a physical property. It can describe what happens when someone dies, but it cannot tell that person why dying matters. This is where faith enters. Faith answers the why not by proof, but by narrative. It provides a story in which suffering has context and life has direction. This does not make faith true in a scientific sense, but it makes it functional in a human sense. Reason explains how the universe behaves. Faith explains how humans endure that behavior. Reason removes illusion. Faith restores significance. This is why neither can fully replace the other. When reason attempts to answer why questions, it produces emptiness. It says there is no inherent purpose, no guaranteed justice, no final meaning. This may be accurate, but accuracy does not satisfy emotional survival. Faith fills this gap by offering purpose, even when it cannot be proven. It says life has meaning, even if it cannot be demonstrated. This difference explains the tension between the two. Reason sees faith as untestable. Faith sees reason as incomplete. Reason demands evidence, faith demands acceptance. But this division is not a failure of either system. It reflects the complexity of the human condition. Humans are not only observers of reality, they are participants in it. They do not only want to know how things happen, they want to know why their experience matters. Reason answers questions that can be shared universally. Faith answers questions that are experienced individually. This is why reason produces consensus and faith produces conviction. Reason builds technology. Faith builds endurance. Reason explains the world. Faith explains our place within it. When reason is asked to provide meaning, it cannot, because meaning is not discovered, it is assigned. When faith is asked to provide mechanism, it fails, because belief cannot replace evidence. Conflict arises when one is forced to do the work of the other. Reason does not fail by refusing to explain everything. It remains honest. Faith does not fail by answering why. It remains human. The mistake occurs when faith claims authority over how the world works, or when reason claims authority over why existence should be endured. This overlap creates confusion, disappointment, and hostility. The truth is simpler. Reason tells us how reality functions. Faith tells us how to live inside that reality. When humans forget this distinction, they demand impossible things from both. And when impossible demands are not met, they declare one enemy and the other savior. But history shows that humanity suffers whenever it tries to live with only one. Reason without faith explains everything and means nothing. Faith without reason means everything and explains nothing. This is why reason cannot explain everything. Not because it is insufficient, but because everything includes the human need for meaning, and meaning does not obey proof. It obeys experience. This is also why faith persists, even in an age of science. Because no matter how complete explanation becomes, the question why never disappears, and reason will never answer it in the way humans need. Faith exists not to compete with reason, but to answer a different hunger, and that hunger is as old as consciousness itself. Humanity does not stand on one side of faith or the other side of reason. It stands between them. This tension is not a mistake in human history. It is its core. Faith was born to protect the human mind from fear. Reason was born to protect humanity from error. One gave meaning when understanding was impossible. The other gave understanding when belief became insufficient. Conflict emerged not because one is evil and the other good, but because they answer different needs. When faith ruled alone, order existed but progress slowed. When reason rose alone, progress advanced but meaning thinned. Humans learned that neither comfort without truth nor truth without comfort is enough. We abandoned free thought for safety and returned to it when safety failed. We obeyed belief to survive and challenged it when understanding became possible. This cycle repeats because humans remain both fragile and curious. We need explanation to act. We need meaning to endure. Reason tells us how the world works. Faith tells us why continuing matters. When either tries to replace the other, humanity suffers. But when both are recognized for what they are, tools, not masters, balance becomes possible. This balance is never permanent. It must be chosen again and again. Thinking is tiring. Believing is comforting. But growth demands thought, and survival demands meaning. This is the burden of being human. Not to choose one forever, but to live consciously between them. The war between faith and reason never truly ends. It quiets, it returns, it changes shape, but it leaves us with one responsibility: to know when to question and to know when to endure. And perhaps wisdom is not choosing faith or reason, but knowing why we need both. If this made you question what you believe and why you believe it, you're exactly where this channel lives. Subscribe for more deep history, philosophy, and the ideas that shaped the human mind. And remember, the most dangerous thing in history has never been ignorance. It has always been thinking.